Welcome back, everyone. So excited today to introduce and welcome my friend Bob Edwards. So, Bob, born and raised in Sacramento, California, went to Oregon State. He's a Beaver. Played basketball for 5 years after a redshirt year, of course, because you can't play for 5 years. No cheat in the system. Graduated in 97, and he was fortunate enough to start with a medical sales job right out of OSU. Got him into x-rays for 11 years on the hospital side. Then in '08, transitioned into dental x-ray. Hasn't looked back since. Married for 20 years to a dentist. We're going to talk about that for sure. Got to hear about that. Has two children, Ava at 17 and Bryce at 15. And he says it's been a great, fun ride, which we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the show, my friend Bob.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here, and I can't wait to get this going with you. Thank you very much for having me here on the Tooth Sleuth.
Well, Bob, we're going to start with the story of I was going to say about how we first met, but one of the best stories ever for those of you who don't know, and most of you don't. So I'm just going to start it right here and now. So I think it was probably a few months back, maybe a few more than a few months back. I'm checking into the hotel of a conference. Bob's checking into the hotel of a conference, and I get a text message, and then I look over, and there's my friend Bob Edwards. And he comes over and says, Greg, do you happen to have an extra belt? I left mine at home.
I did.
Now, Greg is a very seasoned traveler, so of course Greg has an extra belt because I always have one that's in my travel bag, plus the one that I travel with. So Bob Edwards wore my belt for 2 days of a conference. Is this true or not true, Bob?
This is absolutely true. Yes, I travel so much now to all the different dental shows, seeing you out there as well, that I travel a little more comfortably. I wear sweats going through security and whatnot. I have two belts. I do also travel with two belts, and for some reason, I remember when we checked into the Marriott, I realized it just hit me all of a sudden that yes, I forgot my belts. I need some help. Greg looks like he's about my size. Could you help me out, buddy? And you sure did. I mean, I guess that's how good we are friends, that I felt comfortable enough to ask you for a belt. And like giving the shirt off your back, you gave me a belt and saved my hide for those 3 days of the show. Thank you. Yes, true story.
I mean, and it was a leather belt, so literally it was saving your hide from the hide that I had. So there you have it. Well, one of the fun things, Bob, I think about you fairly often when I am recording episodes of the Two Sleuth podcast, because we talk about, everything about the business side of dentistry, but often we talk about, different innovations in dentistry and what's really moved the needle and what people are interested in. And well, don't worry, we'll get to that part of what the sleuth is going on later, because I know you listen to the show. And I would say maybe 30-40%, maybe more. And some of my listening audience, I'm sure, is going to hit me up on socials, because they do that a lot and they respond back to the show, whether it's in, on the platforms or when I post it on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. They'll always harass me when I get it wrong with the percentages and numbers. But oftentimes they'll say, when I ask them, so what is that one thing, if you could go back and be the inventor of, what would it be and why? I have to say, especially lately, there has been a string of people who have talked about, the digital x-ray. Hands down, it has really been the game changer in the industry. And you've been in digital imaging for so long. I want to go back to your days, and I want to get to definitely with Jazz Imaging and where you are now. But I want you to start with your journey when you were in digital imaging in hospitals, I believe it was, right out of school. How did that happen? Because for me, I don't know, it seems rare these days that you find somebody who, like, 27 years you've been in imaging right out the gate, right? So tell me a little bit about how did that happen right then in 97 when you got out of school. Talk to me about that.
Well, I was out of Oregon State, and I started interviewing for jobs, and it was a little bit different now then than it is now with interviewing and searching for jobs. Medreps.com. I remember that one was a big one. I don't know if they're still there.
I remember it well.
And I just started putting my resume, and really it was a very simple resume because there wasn't a whole lot on there except some of my Oregon State experience. some of the summer jobs I had, and that was it. And I was really fortunate to interview with a company called Bracco Diagnostics. It was the diagnostic portion of Squibb, Bristol Myers Squibb Diagnostics, and a lady by the name of Dana Bracco still privately owns it, still out of Milan, Italy. I was able to interview with a gentleman by the name of Ted Ira, and he really liked me. And uh, it's contrast media. Uh, Generically speaking, it was a dye that you inject in the body when you want soft tissues and organs to show up on X-ray machines. So it was considered a pharmaceutical, but sold like a device. So you went in there and you sold it. You went in there and talked about it, and really, um, it got me into every modality of X-ray in the hospital. To walk into MRI, CT, the cath lab, regular X-ray, whatever it was. So I was floating around forever, and that's really how it started. Was with Bracco Diagnostics, and from there, it's a really incredible story. It transitioned. I can tell you about it if you like, but that's how it first started, to be honest.
Yeah, I want to hear more about the transition, but I do want to go back. So, interestingly enough, so in my Neodent days, I was hired on, and then as we were hiring sales reps, as it was building, growing, and exploding, throughout, the mid 2010s and late 2010s, and then even into the 2020s now, we would look for not necessarily those that were from the industry or from implant dentistry, but finding those that had determination, that had discipline, that had the characteristics we were looking for where we could teach them, right? Typically, we wanted them to have like a sales job or two before, right? Coming in. But athletes, I mean, anyone who is an athlete, especially a collegiate athlete, the amount of discipline it takes to become that is incredible. And so for someone like yourself, for sure, would get a look. And so what you've described too about you said somebody took a chance on you. Yes, but obviously the discipline was there, from your high school and then your collegiate athletic career for sure. So then tell me about, years of being in X-ray and the contrast, and a pharmaceutical basically being sold as medical device. Where did the transition come in then from that opportunity into the dental field?
Well, really, it's funny. How it happened was so with Bracco Diagnostics, it got me into the cath lab a lot, which I really enjoyed, cardiology and the heart. And Bracco came out with a company or a product named called the Assist injection system for the cath lab. Because a lot of doctors, if you're in there, they use like a 3-port, 5-port, I don't know how many ports, but stopcock manifolds, and they're twisting it and they're hand injecting the contrast syringe, and then it has to be followed by saline, things like that, flushing it through. And then it was a device that I could sell, also a capital piece of equipment in the cath lab. And the story goes, I was over in Bend, Oregon at St. Charles Medical Center in the cath lab. They had just purchased an assist injection system for their new cath lab, a GE cath lab. And standing literally right next to me is one of my favorite people in the world who I went to high school with, Jim Novak. And he was a senior in high school when I was a freshman. And I knew him, he knew me. And I looked over, I'm like, Jim Novak, blah, blah, blah. And we started chatting. And he was the GE rep who was living in San Francisco at the time, covering Oregon, and had sold them the cath lab where they were putting my assist injection system in. We exchanged information. It was like seeing an old friend. Wow, both doing this. We'll cross paths. Jim reached out to me, I'd say, I want to say 3 months later, 4 months later, we had kept in touch. This is really way before LinkedIn. And so we kept in touch. He reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking to put a GE rep, a cardiology account manager in the state of Oregon. I really think you should do it. And I said, Jim, what about you? Don't you cover it? He's all, it's getting so busy. I'm going to move down to LA, still cover up to San Francisco area, things like that. I don't remember exactly the territories, but I really think you would be a great fit for this job at GE. And then I interviewed with GE, and that got me really into, I was fortunate again to get that job and was starting to represent the entire cardiology suite, the big C arm, the hemodynamic monitoring that went with it, all the networking that went with it, with what we call information management systems and data management systems, how they were supposed to merge together the patient's information with the patient's images, and that was great. And then from there, I'll just tell you quickly, I got married, and GE was wonderful. In 2005, moved me down to the state of California, and I was the GE rep. They carved out a little territory for me, and I was down here, and that was going wonderful. Everything was great. And then I had a really good friend of mine reach out to me, and he's actually, if you want to know the truth, he's one of my best buddies since kindergarten. Kip Snow, kind of been my point guard my whole entire career of playing little basketball all the way through my senior year of high school. And so we always kept in touch. He was in the medical field as well. And he said, hey, he started really, if you want to know the truth, he started talking to me about this startup company in the Bay Area. And the whole time I'm on the phone thinking, I don't want to go do a startup. I just don't want to do that.
It's a different animal.
It
Yeah.
really is. And the funny thing is, that's where he was kind of going with it, but he never said it. That's where I thought he was taking me. And he goes, I'm going to go do this. And I go, well, what about your job? I said, what about your job at Dexis? You really like that job? He's like, yeah. He goes, that's why I'm calling you. You should take my job. And I went, oh, okay. And I thought, you know what? I could maybe use a change. I never really been in dental, married to a dentist. I talked to her about it, and she's like, you should just interview and look at it and see what you think. And I interviewed for the job, and I talked to quite a few reps at the company who absolutely loved it. And I accepted the position, and that was in '08, and it was wonderful. I haven't looked back. I love dental. I really do. It's been fabulous. So that's just kind of how it really all evolved.
So your point guard through primary and secondary school was getting ready to venture out into a startup, which that lane is I can speak from experience, like literally right now in my life, of what it's like having a startup, right? It's a different beast and a different animal altogether, but let alone being an employee of joining a startup. You can ask Melissa Vanderwerf about that, joining my company now as she has. God bless her. I'm glad she did, right? And took a chance on me, like me on her, and it's fantastic so far. But that opportunity opened up for you the opportunity to get into dental. And what year was that you got into dental?
2008.
Oh, wait,
2008.
that's right. Okay, that's right. I read that in your bio. I'm paying attention, I promise. So
I know.
tell me what it is about dental that's kept you in dental for, what, 15, 16 years now? Because there's definitely an affinity and an attraction that you have to it. Because I know a lot of people, once they get in dental, and I'm one of those people myself, right? Get into dental, you just don't leave.
Yeah. So the nice thing is that when I was with GE, we came out with the very first digital cath lab. All the X-rays were really going digital, digital technology. The mammogram world was unbelievable. Being able to detect lesions and disease way before you could possibly see it on a film was just fantastic. So coming out with a digital cath lab, now remember, they're viewing the heart. The heart doesn't stop. You can't stop the heart. It is constantly beating. So rather than a static image, you had to really be able to capture a dynamic image at 60 frames a second, still have it be diagnostic quality and being something that doesn't make mistakes. So GE came out with this technology for the dynamic X-ray with the Innova cath lab. It was absolutely fabulous. So we would go in and to bid our products when people would look at putting in a new cath lab, replacing an older cath lab, and my competitors would come in with a film-based system, which is what it had always been. It had always been reels of film spinning and capturing the film, capturing the images, and we had digital. So it was almost, I don't want to say like shooting fish in a barrel, but you'd walk in with a digital cath lab, and they're like, yeah, this is where we want to go. And your competitors, and we had about 2-year head start on the competition. Everybody obviously caught up. They had their own digital cath lab. So to answer your question a little bit longer, is that in dental, it was still all film. It was still all film. And really what I liked about it is when you walked into the dental office, I was comfortable. I felt like I was talking to someone just like my wife. We started her own practice. I know what that's like. And to be able to go from, it was really exciting to be able to take people from analog to digital, from film to digital X-ray sensors, and walk them through that process. Plus, when you were talking to the dentist, you really were talking to the CEO, the CFO, the person who really was in charge. Sometimes in the hospital, there's so many different players. You had to put so many different hats on. You had to talk to materials management. You had to do different things with infection control. I mean, there's all these boxes you had to check. And I wanted to say, walking into a dental office really simplified the process, and I had that experience under my belt. So it was just a good transition, and I'll never look back because I like calling on the dentist, seeing the person, talking to the owner, and I can relate to it because we also own a dental practice, so I get it.
Yeah, definitely something when you can speak with the decision makers, right? And go right to them and not have the layers of paperwork or go through a procurement team. Although, I'm sure you know this because I see you at a lot of the DSO shows, that tends to be a little more layered in where there are, that's probably more reminiscent of your hospital days where there are a lot more layers into the decision making process, which takes me to your days now at Jazz Imaging. So, how did you get introduced to Jazz Imaging? And tell me a little bit about the journey of starting with them, about how that opportunity came about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll answer some other questions as well because I don't want to get into the whole history of it right now. But with regard to Jazz, I was the person who hired me at Dexis back in '08, who was my direct manager, same age as I am, wonderful guy, Aaron DeCourt, pretty much called me up 2 years ago and said, "Hey, are you happy?" That's exactly what he said. "Are you happy?" And I remember I said to him, "You got a job for me? What's going on?" And getting the band back together. And he goes, "I think I might." And so he was already at Jazz. He was over there as our VP of marketing. He knows sensors very well as well. And to be honest, the sensor world kind of became, it's not as sexy as it once was when it was in '08, taking people through that transitional time. There's a lot more advances and a lot of technology outside of digital. I mean, really, I don't think there's a lot of people anymore that use film. I don't know why they would if they still do. And having a sensor, it was kind of my lane, my wheelhouse. And he introduced me to Jazz. A lot of people from Texas had come over to the Jazz imaging side. Dexis was also going through a transition. I absolutely loved the company that I worked for. I was there 12 and a half years. Absolutely loved it. And when I left, I still felt like I was new because people there had 20 years experience, 27 years experience, 18 years experience. They had year. I still felt like the new guy because once you were there, you never left. They kind of went through a transition of kind of an identity crisis of knowing who they were with Invista Corp. We were the Cavo Kerr Group. They sold Cavo to Plan Mecca. And it just really kind of got a little convoluted there. And then it wasn't just a sensor anymore. It was more of a sensor was one object in your bag of a lot of different things. When I was with Dexis, we were exclusive with Henry Schein. It was an exclusivity for 10 years. So I worked with one distributor. That was it. Now it was open to everybody. It was very busy, which is fine, no problem. But Jazz, I really liked what they had to offer. Um, being a direct manufacturer, being in charge of it, and working directly with the customer, not having to go through distribution, we were able to offer some savings. Todd Miller did a fabulous job with some of the ideas that he came up with and how we wanted to do it. Todd was actually, Todd's our president, founder, CEO, and he was one of the lead engineers on the Dexis Platinum sensor and the Gendex sensors at the time that were manufactured in San Jose, California at Fairchild Imaging. And again, when Dexis was kind of going through its re-identification, now it's Dexis Imaging, and they kind of shut down the manufacturing line in San Jose to do kind of what every other sensor company out there has done, and they outsource their sensor. It's just, I hate to say it, it's kind of like a tire on a car now. Everybody has it, it's out there, and they outsourced it to have it manufactured and made in a different market. Usually an Asian market is where they are. I think their new sensors out of South Korea. But Todd went down the street. How I tell the story is that Todd moved down the street, said, "I can do this and I have some ideas." And being lead engineer, he knows that type of world, and did a very good job, and went down and said, I'm going to make my own sensor, and did, and patented it. And it's wonderful. He did a couple of unique things. One being that able to shoot into everybody's software, which is awesome. He could shoot in because back in the day it was kind of a Coke Pepsi world. If you had this sensor, you shot directly into your software. If you had this sensor, you shot into that software. It was just boom, 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 kind of how it was. But you'd have people that would ask me, "Hey, Bob, I love your sensor. Can we add that to what I have?" And maybe they were using a Carestream, and I said, "Sure, we can put it in there, but it's not going to work the same way your other sensors do because it's just kind of a third party sensor, and you have to go through a Twain driver. A lot of things have to do that." So they would say, "No, I don't want to do that because it disrupts the workflow." And the one thing we want to keep in the dental office is keep the workflow smooth, easy, and simple. And Todd said, "You know what? Why don't we put our own research and development back into our products? Because we only made one product at the time, the Solo sensor." And we had our engineering team, software engineering team, literally writing the code to get us in there so they don't have to, they can bypass the Twain driver, and it can work simultaneously with what they currently have. And it's a really nice offering that we're able to give people. I don't know if you want me to get into it more, but we have our subscription-based model. We have a traditional purchase model, but we work directly with the customer, and we have a really nice, what's the word? Really nice product, and I can't think of it. We just have a really nice program. There you go. A very, very nice.
Well, and what you talk about too, right? Because if you're direct to the consumer, right? As a manufacturer, that's a lot different than if you're going through distributors, just as a business model itself. Because if you just want to talk on the whole, it's really all about the margins. And if you're going through a distributor, then you've got margins you have to deal with, right? And you don't have that direct communication. And when it comes to sensors, you were talking about this and saying, I don't think, there's really many that deal with film. And my lane is the fixed full arch lane, right? Big cases, and you think of all the technology that's involved. I got to tell you, there's still some clients that I'll go in and, because my process, right? It's a gratis discovery call to learn more about the client. Then it's an in-office assessment, which, there's a fee associated for me to come into the office, go through my assessment and say, okay, here's your challenges. Here's some solutions. Here's the resources you need. You can either do all that yourself, which is great. If you can implement it yourself, go for it. This is how you can get better at what you're doing. Or, you can bring G&A consult on to help with any or all of that. But when I see that and I go in for these in-office assessments, I still see at times the little film pieces of like PAs in that, and they're putting into this machine and they're scanning it into the machine, and then it goes digital. I still see them, and then they drop into the bottom of the tray. And I was just on one last week, and I'm looking at this and thinking, what on God's green earth, if you're doing these full arch procedures, are you doing with it? But I didn't want to judge, but I was internally. But I don't want to judge, but I was internally. It's just one of those where you say that, and it's the advances that are current, and you think there needs to be some investment for this instant visibility for the best possible, because they have the CBCT, but yet when you're doing, what I call, the gun for the PA, you still have, but maybe they just need to wait to upgrade. Maybe they do need to hire us so they can close
Well,
more cases and a higher closing percentage.
yeah, and what's funny, Greg, is that's really not film. That's kind of the new film, if you will, because that was the intermediate between film and digital sensors. It was
Oh, okay. So I've got it wrong. No, please, yeah, teach
yeah.
me, because maybe there's others that are like me that are neophytes when it comes to that. Yeah.
Well, they're called phosphor plates. And so how I would describe it is back in the day when I'd walk into an office, again, getting them to understand digital and going digital and what it meant, and taking them through that process, because it was also the same time that kind of the iPhone was coming out and everyone was taking pictures now. It's on there. They're all digital. And we would replace every dental office usually had a dark room, and they would go and process the film
Right.
itself. And
Oh, so that's the film that I'm thinking of, not this. Yeah, the
yeah,
little the little the
that's
little
more
squares that they're sliding
yeah.
in. Yeah.
So that's a phosphorus plate, and it goes in and be digital. And the way I would describe phosphorus plates was the same way my mom would tell me, she's digital. And I used to tell the story because she would take pictures. My mom, we used to think that she invested in Kodak and Fujifilm because she was always taking pictures of all of us and the family, me playing sports, and we'd always go get it developed. And you had to check the box if you wanted 4x6s, 5x7s, if you wanted doubles. That was always the best, getting doubles. I'd say, Mom, get doubles. Well, then there was always just film. That was it. You had pieces of paper, you had pictures. And phosphorus plate, my mom's like, hey, Bobby, I'm digital now, and would take pictures with film, and she would still go get it developed, but instead they would give her a CD back in the day. And so then you put the CD in the computer, and now she's digital. And I'm like, Mom, there's a really easier way to do that as well. Just get a digital camera, and then you just have it digital. And cut out
Just plug it in, Mom.
Right,
Take out the middleman.
So that's kind of the new film right now, is the phosphorus plates. And the nice thing is too is that our sensors will work in conjunction with the phosphorus plates as well. Phosphorus plates, I think the ADA at one point in time, do not quote me, please don't quote me. I think it was something that they are good for 50 hits, because they get hit, it's imprinted, and then it's wiped, and then it's hit. And what happens is if that phosphorus plate even gets a scratch on it, that scratches on the picture itself. And so you'd have assistants and RDAs and hygienists that would have to go through the phosphorus plates and look at them to see which ones and get rid of the bad ones. They kept ordering new phosphorus plates, not as often as they would have to order film, but they'd order phosphorus plates. And eventually, when you get them a digital sensor, I truly feel with the simplicity and the workflow, you would see that the whoever was taking X-rays in the office was fighting over the sensor. Like, I got the sensor, I'm doing the sensor, you're doing the phosphor plates this time, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, but we work in conjunction. So that's, again, the beauty of the product. You work in conjunction with the phosphorus plate system. And then I think eventually they just kind of phase the phosphorus plate system out. And maybe there's still a need. They might keep it there if they have to do it, whatever that may be. But then they add more and more digital X-ray sensors. Again, that plugs direct integration, instantaneous gratification. Take the picture, it's right there on the screen in your imaging software. It's really nice.
And being able to transition, I love it. All right, Bob, this is the part of the program all of my guests play, is a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? 3 rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind. I know you listen to the show. Are you ready to play?
I am. Yes, go ahead. This is what makes me nervous. I think this is why I was nervous. Go ahead.
Question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
All right.
Your wife won't listen. Go ahead.
It wasn't that. It was the worst bad breath I ever encountered. Was a very good friend of mine who, I remember this specifically, and then I learned eventually later what was going on being married to a dentist, and that my wife, it was a friend of mine whose father was a close talker, so they get really close, and you're young, you're little, and you get close to you, and you didn't want to be rude and back up, but it was just one of those things, and I felt like not only could I smell his breath, I could taste his breath, and it was just, and I thought, man, what is going on? But I remember looking at his teeth thinking that it would be horrible, but no, they were white and looked clean. It didn't look like any food stuck in there, but I think my wife said that was probably early periodontal disease or something like that. I don't know, but yes.
Perio breath. Yeah, very common. Yeah, sometimes you can smell it coming down the hallway when they're sitting in an operatory.
The sad thing is,
for sure.
If you want to know the truth, the sad thing is when that, whenever I get kind of that smell or I find someone who has that, it takes me back to that instant moment when I was like, oh man, I remember, take me back in time. Your eyes start watering a little bit. I don't want to be rude, but yes,
those olfactory nerves, I tell you what, emotional imprints for sure, and memories for sure. All right, question number 2. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
Great question, because when I was little, I had great teeth, apparently. The dentist always said, you have great teeth. And my teeth don't meet right here at all. My lower jaw, as I got older, shifted. I got a little bit narrower up top. And my sister apparently didn't have good teeth when we were growing up. And so they put her in braces. And I didn't need braces, apparently. Oh, he doesn't need braces. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I had buddies that went through braces. And I'm like, I don't need braces. And I wish if I could go back, I would have done that in braces. And I even honestly looked at having jaw surgery, but I'd heard some different side effect things, and I like the way I look, and I am who I am. But if I could make my teeth wider up top and connect better, I think that will help, because when I eat, it's hard to, in the front, get your munchers going. So that's one thing I would do.
We like the way you look too, Bob. You look good the way you are. Okay, question number 3. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't use your own, which one would you choose and why?
I would go back. I really, and this is honestly when really talking to Shelly, my wife, a lot, is that she could not wait for a digital scanner, an intraoral scanner, to do digital impressions and have it be there, because of the way they do the with the goop and the molds, and then sending it out, and then making a cast or whatever it was, and then having to put that in a box, sending that out, having the person make a mouth guard for it, or whatever it may be, or a crown, or whatever that may be. And I just think that's a fascinating, like the digital X-ray sensor. I think the intraoral scanner is wonderful. The camera was always there. Intraoral camera have been out there for a while, but having the intraoral scanner out there and being able to do digital impressions quickly and easily, and right there again, instantaneous gratification on your computer, was wonderful. And then being able to send that file to your lab or whatnot, and now sometimes people are even doing it in house. So I do like that product a lot, and I would have loved to have been part of that invention. That would have been great.
Yeah, getting rid of the goopy impressions and the bubbles and having to make stone models and all of that. Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, in the last few minutes, Bob, is there anything I haven't asked you today or that you'd like to share with my listening audience, including how to get a hold of you at Jazz Imaging?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. So what I do now, which is wonderful, like you mentioned, with being now in the special market DSO world, it's kind of the best of both worlds. You are dealing with the dentist again, but you're also now dealing with a DSO who might have 100 dental offices underneath them, and excuse me. And what we do nicely, that I just like, is it helps me combine my skill sets of those days calling the hospitals, of being able to help manage a lot of different offices, a lot of different rooms. But a lot of these DSOs nowadays, they offer autonomy. And so you have office A, B, C, and they all have a different sensor. They all have different sensors, different softwares. So when someone maybe calls up and says, "Hey, I have to get a new sensor," blah blah blah, and they're like, "Well, hold on, let me put that hat on, let me put this company hat on." And now what people are finding with Jazz a lot is that we go into all softwares seamlessly, and we work in conjunction, and we offer a subscription-based service. So for a certain amount, $139 a month, they will always have a brand new working sensor that you don't need to continuously pay warranty on anymore. You don't. I always tell people there's a cost of ownership, there's a cost of purchase, and then the continuous cost of ownership. And with us, with our subscription space, the Jazz Club, people like it. I just tell them, run the numbers, run your own numbers. I think you're going to find unbelievable savings. It works in conjunction with what they have. I'm not here to replace their good working products that they've invested in. But again, using my tire analogy, it's like a tire in a car. And no one thinks about them. No one thinks about sensors. No one thinks about the tire until all of a sudden that warning light goes on your dashboard, or you're on the side of the road at a complete standstill because you can't move. And now you're waiting to get back on the road. You need a new tire. And so really what we can do, I always tell people, I don't care what make and model of car you drive. If you have an issue with one tire, I can replace it. Hopefully you like it. And as the other ones eventually wear out, like sensors do, sensors wear out, they go bad, they depreciate immediately. And they are built to last a while, but you have to treat them nice. It's the most handled piece of equipment in a dental office, which is amazing. People don't think about that. It travels from room to room, into a computer, in a sheath, in the mouth, around the mouth, out of the mouth, out of the sheath, wiped down, pulled out of the computer, and handed to the next operatory where it does this all day, just like your tire. And you don't think about it until it's like, plug it in, and it's like, it's not working. We're down. help me out. So we can quickly and easily be in direct. We only make two products. We have two size sensors. That's it. So they call us up. We're going to remote into your software just to make sure it's not software related. About 90% of the time, it's not. It's hardware. And at the moment, right then, we're not even there to convince you it's your fault or anything of that nature. We talk to you on the phone. The minute we hang up, because I know you don't want to be on the phone with us too long either in a dental office we don't want to take it away from production time. We hang up, we put a brand new sensor, brand new, in a box with a return label, ship it to you. All we ask is you put your old one in the box and ship the other one back. That's it. Plug it back in and go. I always tell people we're the fastest pit crew out there. We'll get you back up and running like as quick as possible.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And so how do DSOs and others in the special markets get a hold of you, Bob?
They can call me directly, or they can probably reach me through, if they come by a show, I give you my business card. I don't really want to give my cell phone number out here on the phone, but podcast.
You don't want to blow you up. No, I don't blame you
But,
for
but,
sure.
but
Yeah.
if you come by and get my business card, I put my cell phone number on there because I want people, because a lot of people text, call. All of our information is at jazzimaging.com. Everything is out there. Full disclosure for you to look at. Have any questions, you can call Jazz Imaging and get a hold of us. But the best way to go is to jazzimaging.com. Take a look at everything, the phone number, the address. We're in San Jose, California. And if you need to get a hold of me, they will connect you immediately. Or you can email me at bob@jazzimaging.com. There you go.
Perfect. And we'll make sure we get all that in the show notes. Bob, thank you so much for being a guest in the Two Sleuth podcast. It has been a pleasure getting to know you even better and learning more about your journey into dental, and nothing but continued success to you, my friend.
Thank you, Greg. It's such an honor. I've watched the Two Soup for some while, and when I got the invitation, I was like, yes. Plus, I think the world of you. You are a wonderful person, and it's good for dentistry what you do. And so I like seeing you at the shows. I like following you on LinkedIn, and it's truly an honor to be on your show. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words, Bob. Thank you so much.